Hi, everyone. Welcome to the program on Faces of Fraud, how to stay safe from the latest threats. I appreciate you tuning in for this session. I think there'll be a lot of good, valuable information for you during this session. And I'm going to start you, though, with a little bit about me. So I joined the FBI in 1988. I was an agent for over 20 years. And for most of my career, I was involved in white-collar crime. Wait, that doesn't sound right. I investigated white-collar crime. I wasn't actually involved in it myself. But one of the major parts of the FBI's white-collar crime program is about fraud and fraud prevention. So I like to focus on prevention when I talk about fraud. And when I go on TV, and sometimes CNBC will ask me to talk about various crimes that have occurred, I like to talk about how we prevent fraud from happening, what we can do to stay safe from fraud. And that's what the program is about today. So let's get right into it. Now, there is a handout that goes with the presentation. This handout has the 10 points I'm going to be talking about today and lots of more information about the problem on the handout and about resources that you can use to keep safe and resolve situations if they come up. So I'll be referring to that, to the handout a couple times during the presentation. It's not something you need for the presentation, but of course it is a good resource for you to have after. A lot of people ask me why I joined the FBI, and I guess trace that interest back to the mid-1970s, where I grew up in a town called Norwalk, Connecticut, and there was a store that my dad owned. It was called Jet Variety. Now today they call them convenience stores, but it was basically a convenience store. We called it Jet Variety, and I worked there as a teenager. I worked there for many years before I went away to college. And we used to sell newspapers from the New York metropolitan area. One of them was the New York Post. And every day I would go out and get the newspapers that had been thrown like at 4 in the morning to the front of my dad's store. I'd show up to open up the store with my dad and whoever else was working at 7 a.m. And my job was to get the newspapers and put them on the racks in the stores. And one day I saw this headline in the New York Post, 1978, a mobsters, basically one of the major crime families in New York, the Bonanno crime family, had robbed not a business, not a bank, they robbed an airport. They robbed an airport of $5 million. In today's dollars, that would be equivalent to $17.2 million. But in any case, I read down through the article as a teenager, and I'm looking at great interest, and I see that the FBI is investigating the case, and that's when I decided that's what I want to do. I want to be an FBI agent, investigate the mob, investigate some of these heists that they were involved in. And that's the way they used to steal money. That was a big example. But, nowadays it's not quite like that. They kind of get us, not just the mob, but the criminals get us in different ways. And sometimes they just nip at us with smaller frauds. But collectively, the millions and millions of dollars that are lost are a great problem for the victims and society as a whole. So I'm going to talk about 10 things that you can do today to stay safe from this type of fraud. We'll go through them as you see on the side of the screen. You'll see the 10 tips, and we'll highlight them one at a time. And first is to create an online Social Security account. Now, what this does is it prevents criminals from having your Social Security benefits sent to them. You can do this at any age. You can set up this account. It doesn't matter if you're eligible to collect benefits or not. This is how you track your Social Security benefits throughout your lifetime. And you do this at ssa.gov. So you go to the site, you'll set up this account, and you'll have a username and a password. And then the criminals with your personal information can't go online and set up an account in your name and have your benefits directed to their bank account. Now, this could be done if they have your personal information, so that's a big mess to unwind. You imagine having to talk to the Social Security Administration about unwinding that situation? So you want to make sure that you stay safe from this. Now, this is simply how they would do this. Let me just show you. So what they would do, if they had your Social Security number, they go to create an account, right? And they're going to come to the page that looks like this. And since they don't have an account yet, they're going to create a new account. And they'll go through the terms and service. They'll agree to that, of course. They'll hit next. And then they will put in your information, right, with your Social Security number. And since if you are, in this case, if you're 62 or older, they will start the process of collecting benefits using your identity, and only they'll set up their bank account as the money the bank goes the money as the bank that the money goes to. Now you can imagine if this happens, what a pain that would be to get cleared up. So to stay safe from this, you want to make sure that it doesn't happen to you, and you would sign up for, let me back up there, your SSA account at your My Social Security account at ssa.gov. So keep in mind that you don't have to start collecting benefits. You're only telling the Social Security Administration that you're going to track your benefits throughout your lifetime. You can do it at any age, but if you're 62 or older, you definitely want to have this account so criminals can't victimize you this way. Okay, let's go on to step number 2. And you want to do step number 1 before you do tip number 1 before you do tip number 2, because if you freeze your credit reports first, then you have to go to a Social Security office to actually do the online Social Security account. So you don't want to have to do that. No one wants to go down to a Social Security office if you don't have to. All right. So freezing your credit reports. Do that after you've created your online Social Security account. All right. So freezing your credit reports. There are 4 credit reporting agencies. Now I know people have heard about the 3 that you see on the screen. There's a 4th one. It's called Innovis. It's a smaller one. It may not be used for anything that you do, but you want to keep it protected. So make sure you freeze that one as well. All right, now let me show you why freezing works so well to prevent many types of fraud. And keep in mind a couple of things. Freezing does not affect your current credit card relationships. All of that stays the same. If your credit card company decides to raise your credit limit, they don't have to, the freeze doesn't affect them. They can check your credit history and do all of that. You have an existing relationship with them, so it doesn't affect that. And you have to freeze all 4 credit reports independently, right? Freezing, they don't share freezes like they do with fraud alerts. And we'll talk about that in a second. You got to freeze them all separately, and freezing is free. It doesn't cost any money to freeze your credit reports, and that's based on a federal law which took effect in 2018, about a year after the Equifax breach, to make freezing easier to keep us all safe. Now, this is why freezing works so well to prevent many types of fraud. Let's say a criminal obtains your Social Security number, and they tried to get a credit card using your identity. The credit card company will run a credit check on you, but the credit check can't be done because your credit history is, or your credit history is frozen, your credit report is frozen, and so the application gets rejected. Now, this is why freezing works so well to prevent what's called new account fraud. These new accounts from being opened in your name. And if you freeze all your credit reports, then the criminals can't open those accounts in your name. They can't get loans in your name. They can't get credit cards in your name as well. Now, on the handout that's entitled Preventing Identity Theft, which is another one that you'll get from this session, you'll see on the back of that handout, you will see information about credit freezes, and you will see the names, addresses, and phone numbers of all the credit reporting agencies. And they are the places you go to directly to freeze your credit reports. And I'll show you how easy that is in a second. So you want to freeze your credit reports directly at those sites. Now, you can do it by phone or by mail. It's just a little bit more cumbersome. It's a little bit more difficult to freeze your credit reports that way. So if you go to Experian site, which is used as an example, remember it's the site that's listed on the handout. If you go to that site directly, what you're going to do is add a security freeze. So once you click on that, it'll bring you to this page, and you can freeze your own credit file. But first, wait, you can freeze a minor's credit file. Now, minors don't have credit reports. That's good if they don't have one. If they have one, they've already been victimized by fraud. But as a minor, as a parent of a minor or a legal guardian of a minor, you can create a credit report for a minor. That's part of the 2018 federal law. And you can freeze it at the same time, and that keeps them safe from potentially years of fraud. A child is anyone under the age of 16. They haven't reached their 16th birthday yet for the purposes of this. You can create a credit report for them and then freeze it, and that keeps them safe. I highly recommend keeping kids safe from identity theft by creating and freezing credit reports for them.